Hi, everyone. That was quite the introduction. Wow. Before I jump in, does everyone have a number? Excellent. If anyone needs a number, can you just raise your hand, and we have the tin brought around to you. Unless everyone, oh, you all did the right thing. Good job. Excellent. Okay, thanks. So now that's done. Excellent. Very nice to meet you. Special thanks to New Media Manitoba and Manitoba Music for hosting me and hosting us tonight. And my name is Kenley Kristofferson. I'm a composer for concert band, like school band. Remember school band? Yeah. Choir, recently symphony orchestra, and video games. I've been composing for games since 2004, which I'm told is now kind of a long time ago. So some games I've done, I did a DuckTales game, Betty Boop Bop, and just last week, Horus Heresy Drop Assault came out. So a lot of the presentation today will be about going through that process, going from sketchbook, actually going from nothing to a game. So our set list for today, oh wait, I'll do the set list after, because we should start with music. I have a mentor named Bill Christensen, and he's really great. And he always says, start with music, end with music. Isn't that a nice way to start? Start with music, yeah, I like that. So we're going to do a little quiz, a little video game music quiz. There are no prizes, and if you know it, great, awesome. If you don't know, that's fine too. That's why we're all here. We're all here to learn. I've stuck with Nintendo brand games just because Nintendo is the thing that we know. They're going to go from more commonly known to more obscure. So as we go down the list, I'll be getting more and more obscure. So here is number one. Yeah. Takers? Yeah. Yes. Yes, the title screen. Excellent. Do you all remember how you feel when you first saw this? When you saw like Epona and Link climbing on like the darkened landscape? Yeah. The way you feel when you first see that? Yeah, it's, well, that, right? It's the title screen from Ocarina of Time. Excellent. Good. Here's number two. I'm going to wait till the thing is done, but I see you first. Is the volume okay? Volume? Oh, you know, wait till that stuff is finished playing. Up a step. All right. Title screen, yeah. Overture. Beautiful. Isn't that great? Isn't that beautiful? God, look how beautiful that is. Yeah, I wish I wrote that. Number three. Oh, just let it play out, because it might be what you think it is, but it might not. I'll go with Fernando on this one, but hold that thought for a sec. You'll hear it at the turnaround, whether or not you're right, which is a hint. Yeah. I got Fernando first, but it's going to fade out. It's Link's Awakening. Excellent. Yeah, it's Link's Awakening. The overall theme from Link's Awakening. That is the regular one. I'm glad you asked. Yeah. Good. Number four. Not the title theme, but it is Yoshi's Island. It is the map selection. Isn't it the map? Yeah. You can't see the details super well, but someone made this out of perler beads. Remember, like when you're in like kindergarten, you got the grids with those little beads. Someone made the whole. Isn't that incredible? Yeah. People are amazing. And number five. I see you, but I'm going to let it play out. Like, I bet Kurt will be the only one to get this. But I got like four of you. I gotta let it fade out. Okay. Not of Mario World. Good guess though. Of?
Super Mario Land.
Of Super Mario Land. That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's the weird one. The weird Mario. Excellent. So I thought maybe we should walk through the set list a little bit. But before we do that, I love that you had a connection with that. You're like, oh my God, because you have this emotional connection with this music, right? And that's the point, right? That's what we're trying to do. but from the other side. So when we're making stuff, we want our listeners to have an emotional connection with crazy sunglass-wearing, rock-throwing rocks. So we're trying to develop that connection. And I love your response. So tonight's set list, we're going to split it into two. The first, we're going to explore from the developer's side. What do I want? Identifying your game's musical style. Then number two, how you get paid. Paying the piper. Rates, budget, all that stuff. We're going to get that out of the way early. That's really important. Number three, drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts. Because as much as you want to write something and have it be approved, that almost never happens the first time. So working together for the sound you both want. We've got some activities in there, but we're going to take a break after that one. Then for set number two, we're going to continue with some examples that are a little more in-depth of what the process is actually like working with a developer. And we're going to talk about schedules a little bit. When does the composer come on? What are appropriate deadlines? What are different ways of doing deadlines or getting paid, different payment schedules? And then we're going to finish off with my 2014 track of the year. And then I'm going to rant a little bit about video game music and composing, because I can. And then a surprise. Okay, so do you have any questions before we jump in? Brilliant. Okay, so part one, what do I want? Identifying your game musical style. If you haven't played Mother 3, masterpiece. That game's a masterpiece. Okay, so in a word or two, as a developer, you might already know what you want. You want a rock soundtrack, or a chiptune soundtrack, or an electronic or an EDM soundtrack. But as we know, like with most broad styles, that within each broad style, there's a whole other universe of styles. Like, you might be into metal, but not thrash metal, but speed metal, but not Viking metal, or whichever, right? So we're going to explore, and not to be confused with a whole nother universe. It is a whole universe or another whole universe, but you would never break another with whole. Ridiculous. Whole nother. So you might want an orchestral sound or a jazz soundtrack. Let's start with jazz. I want a jazz soundtrack, but do you want this? Because this is a thing, like Beyond the Sea and BioShock. You know, Bobby Darin sang that one. You might want to go a little crazier. You say, I kind of want something more bebop. You probably don't want this, but I'm putting it in there for context. So now the thing you probably want is this. So jazzy. This is from Ellie Noir by the Hale Brothers. Yeah, something like that. But it's hard to identify what that subgenre is. 1940s detective jazz is how I, because they're like, oh, I know what that is. I see you, kid. You might want to do something more orchestral. But the problem is when you talk to a classical composer, you're like, oh, orchestral, awesome. This is not what you want, though, I bet. I'm not going to let that resolve. But they might no, like orchestral, like Batman. So these are the same genre, two different things. Very different sides of the orchestral coin. Or you may want to cut it down the middle. Something kind of thematic, kind of exciting, kind of interesting. I also wish I wrote that. Yeah, so there are so many different ways of experiencing music and experiencing what we want to call music. Jazz, orchestral, and then you can split that up. If you want a chiptune soundtrack or a rock soundtrack. Do you mean an 80s rock soundtrack? Do you mean a grunge soundtrack? Do you mean a 70s or a 60s psychedelic soundtrack? So our job as composers with developers is to find what that is in all these terms. But as a developer, you got to find the right person. Because, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not super good at EDM, at electronic dance music. You might want to hire a composer whose style is compatible with the music that you want for a game. So, for example, like Danny Baranowski has a very particular style of music. He wrote for Super Meat Boy, The Binding of Isaac, Crypt of the Necrodancer this past year. Hold on for one sec, I see you, but hang on tight. And his style is like super groove heavy, very processed, electronic with rock elements with these kind of squirrely melodies. And like you might want to hire, like you might want that sound. That's the sound I want. And if you want Danny's sound, hire Danny. That's the best way to do it. Austin Wintory writes for Journey, The Banner Saga, which, are two different, well, they're two different scores, but they're that kind of broad orchestral score that he's really known for. Monaco he's not known for in that style, but it's still a really fun game, and the music is really great. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to finish that tangent.
Sorry, this is a time, but
no.
Baranowski's last name ends with a Y.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Another option is that you could hire a composer who works in various styles, who's kind of a chameleon. So Vert Kaufman, who did DuckTales Remastered, he did Mighty Switch Force, he did Shovel Knight this past year. He can write anything. He is a huge chameleon, and you might want that. You might want someone who's very versatile, like if your game doesn't have one style. When I did Betty Boop Bop, there was every style under the sun. That was a rhythm game that goes through the decades of Betty Boops. There was jazz, like bebop jazz, swing. Do you guys remember Electric Circus from the 90s? Yeah, Electric Circus. And like 80s chiptune. There was all sorts of things. So you just had to be versatile. So I fall into the category of writing in various styles because my super dreamy melodic performance music is not very good for video games. So those are two of the many different ways. Let's look at some more. If you want to stay local, which is always nice, find a regional database and search for composers there. So for example, Media Manitoba and Manitoba Music are both regional databases. You can look through there and look for composer, and anyone who's tagged themselves as a composer will show up. You can go to their website, their SoundCloud, or whatever, which you could also do on here. You could also ask other developers. Hey, who are you working with right now? Who do you like? Who's good? Who's nice? Who can I afford? Because they're going to know that stuff. They have experience. And especially at the local level, game design, we're close. We're not competitive is the word I'm looking for. We help each other out where we can. Do you guys have any questions about the search process? The search process. Hey.
What's the best way of getting your own music out there?
I think SoundCloud. SoundCloud, and then a super active Twitter and a super active Facebook. And then, of course, getting into Manitoba, getting into Manitoba music, and then going to stuff. Going to, how old are you?
16.
So you can't go for drinks yet. But when you can go for drinks, that is a great way to network. So hey, Secret Handshake is going out to the King's Head. Go there, bring cards. You don't have to talk about it. You can just shoot the breeze. But just meeting people is good. And then, listening to them. Because, people like talk. I like to talk. And then eventually I'll say, oh, God, sorry, I've been talking so much. Tell me about you. And then you start talking about composing. And now I'm all ears. So then that's a good way, just networking. Oh, and having good manners. You wouldn't think so, but being nice is a really marketable trait. Being nice is really important. It's so important, and having good manners and not cutting people off. That's a really good question. Shazam. So we found them, whomever he or she is. Once you've found your composer, the fastest way to help them is to show them work that you already like. So that could be games, movies, or bands, or albums, or TV, whatever. Or you might want to have a combination of things, like L.A. Noire, but in the future, which kind of defeats the whole point of L.A. Noire, but whatever. Just tell them they'll know what to do. Like you might want a pirate game, except instead of pirates, it's Mech Warrior. And then you're like, oh, Mech Warrior Pirates. Yeah, I can do that. Sure, great. Yeah, good. So working together, right? So that leads us, if I know my order of slides, to our first activity. So you all have numbers, right? Excellent. I'm a teacher, by the way. Can you tell? So what we're going to have similar numbers get together, and we're going to find 3 source materials, so like a game, a movie, or a band, or an album, or whatever, for the following types of game pitches. Number 1, can you raise your hand for a sec? Number 1s? Excellent. Number 1, a AAA game about invading robots from space, attacking a post-apocalyptic world where only a handful of humans survive. And if you can't remember all that, I'm going to give the card to you. You said you're number 1, right? Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so there is a pen at the number 1 station. You don't have to go right yet. We're going to get through all of them first. A pen at the number 1 station. You can write on the back of the index card, or the recipe card, rather. Number 2s, where are you? All right, handful of 2s. An indie game about a treasure hunter who scours regions of the world looking for particular treasures of interest, but isn't Spelunky. After I wrote that, I'm like, oh, no, that's already an indie game. So that's number 2. Number 2 is by the Coaches. Number 3, a mobile puzzle game set in a fantasy world where blocks need to be matched, though each block has a special ability. P.S. Number 2s, where are you? Number 2s? Sorry, I'm going to give this to you. Number 3s. You said you're number 3? Yeah. Brilliant. Number 4. A PC point-and-click adventure set in a town the time forgot, where things are not as they seem. Number 4 is where are you? I might give you number 4 because you're the closest to me. Excellent. Number 5, something made at a game jam about a skateboarder who has to dodge objects in the way. Number 5, where are you? Give you guys number 5. And number 6, a flight sim for tablet that includes 3 different cities, Chicago, LA, and New York. Interesting. And that's number 6. Who's number 6? Wesley. Excellent. Good. So I'll give you guys 5 minutes. There is music playing, and when the music ends, find your way back. Oh, that was supposed to happen. So it's an interesting thing, but now we've got to bring you on board. So to all who complain with the price of musicians, a guy calls the Musicians Guild to get a quote on a 6-piece band for a wedding. The rep says, off the top of my head, about $2,000. The guy says, what, for music? And the rep says, I'll tell you what, call the plumbers union and ask for 6 plumbers to work from 6 to midnight on a Saturday night, and whatever they charge you will work for half. Yeah, I don't know, just a facetious joke, because it's like, I don't know. Here are a few different ways of paying the composer / getting paid. This is from Emmett Cook, who writes for filmandgamecomposers.com. And here's the article right there. You could ask for a percentage of the budget. In large feature films, composers can often get from 5 to 10% of the overall budget. So when you hear, like, okay, the movie's budget is $200 million, just let that sink in for a second of how much that one person is in control of. Isn't that crazy? That's a lot of money. But don't forget, this includes the cost of recording the music, which can be huge, meaning not as much profit as you think. If the budget is big, you could try to ask between 5 and 10% and negotiate from there. This depends on the type of the project, for a film or game, depends, as well as the size of the budget. $5 of $10 isn't a lot. So here's the thing, though. In movies, it is usually the responsibility of the composer to find the orchestra, to hire the orchestrators, to hire the staff. In video games, especially in our market, I wouldn't do that because as composers, you'll see that we don't command the millions of dollars that film composers in Hollywood are part of. So I would say, like, I'll do this, but you need to have part of the budget set aside for studio time, for hiring an engineer, for all that. Like, that needs to be set from the studio side. Because then you'll say, yeah, it should be a cost about this much, and I promise you, you are always under. You are always like, oh, it should be about $5,000. Guess what? It's $8,000, and now you're not getting paid. So ask them to set aside and do research because, bless your hearts, and my heart too, because I've made this mistake. You will always lowball, and you will always be wrong. So just let the studio handle it, and you write the music. You could charge an hourly rate. You could set an hourly rate for composing, give a rough estimate of how many hours it would take you to write the music, and allow for a little negotiation. You might be selling yourself short, or then again, you may not. You will probably sell yourself short because you're really nice and you're from Winnipeg. Because you might say, like, okay, it's going to take me about 10 hours to write, or it's going to take me about 5 hours to write the menu music. Guess what? It took you 10 minutes. Oh, it's going to take me, I did in 10 minutes. It took me 3 hours to write the battle music. It'll take you 15 hours. So, it's hard to budget because you don't know where the roadblocks are. And you could, that might be okay, except when you quote the studio for $2,000 and then you give them your timesheet that has $5,000 on it. And then all of a sudden you're off by, several 100% from your quote. So that's dangerous. Unless you know how you work, then go for it. I'm not that responsible. You could charge a flat rate per minute of music. This is what most of us do. Some composers charge a specific rate per minute of music created, depending on the number of instruments or not. Again, it depends on the project, but for some small projects, you can set a price per minute of 1 to 5, 6 to 10, whatever. The musicians' union composers do it this way. Like if you're going to hire a chamber orchestra of 11 people, then the rate is this. If you're doing a string quartet, the rate is this. The problem is, of course, sometimes a string quartet is just as much work as the chamber orchestra. So a lot of us just do, this is how much it costs for anything. But like my drum kit is 6 to 10 instruments. So grain of salt, right? Because I don't know, you might as well make everything individually if it's a fake drum kit. You could also pull a number out of your head. Please don't. Actually, sidetrack, there are times where it's okay. When they say, like, I got to do this game, my budget's $5,000. You're like, oh, okay, fine, I'll do it for that. That's okay. You're like, well, if you're going to go with me, yeah, I'll do it for $5,000. Then it's not so bad. But they kind of have to give you the number first. There are a few instances where a composer can take a percentage of the final sale, and that's mostly in indie titles, because there isn't the bureaucracy of a AAA organization. So, for example, like Danny, I spelled it right there. Excellent. I felt so dumb that I misspelled it. As someone with a long name that is difficult to spell, I tried really hard to spell it. So embarrassed. I mean, it's like, okay. So, for example, like Danny Baranowski, I read an interview, which I didn't post because I'm not responsible, often takes it off the back, and Super Meat Boy was made by 3 people and sold millions of copies. So once you start crunching that numbers, that looks an awful lot like a house. Or a few houses, I don't know. Con, if the game isn't successful, and let's be honest, a lot of them aren't. You just worked for free. Unless you bought gear, then you lost money. Then it cost you money to do the game. And that's not a good place we want to be in. So most of us work on a per-minute system. And this is where it gets kind of crazy. Do you ever wonder, like, I wonder how much like Tommy Tallarico makes, because he does the video games live, and he's like holds the Guinness Book of World Records for the most games composed. Doesn't mean they're all good, but yeah, he holds the record for the most games. So we're going to do a little bit of silly AAA number crunching. Not number crunching at all. I ripped them all from articles. And they all keep getting bigger. So the smallest was in 2005 when Alexander Brannon, who wrote for Unreal, Deus Ex, and recently Dust, said industry standard is $1,000 to $1,200 per minute. That's like, for me, I could write 1 minute of music and pay my mortgage. Great. Awesome. So I could spend 1 morning on it. Isn't that crazy? That's baffling to me. But wait, there's more. His formula for an audio budget, this is actually kind of good, is industry standard, whatever that means, times minutes required, plus padding, where padding is like something like a musical sound effect, like a chime or level up, or you just obtained this awesome item. That's called padding. And that's the audio budget. And that's kind of a good formula. If you are developing, that's fine. Tommy Tallarico, who I just talked about, is a game composer who founded GANG, the Game Audio Network Guild, to promote the field. Said a typical fee for a composer is $1,000 per minute of music, with top names making up to $2,000 a minute. $2,000 a minute, which require for a typical game, apparently, which requires 1 or 2 hours of music. A composer can make $60,000 to $240,000. P.S. That's not everyone. Just putting that out there. And this is from an article in the New York Times. It's Aliens Attacking Through the Strings, which is a train wreck. And I'm going to come back and rip apart in about an hour. But there's more. Game composers can make anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 a minute. And many games demand 80 to 100 minutes. This is the caveat, though. This is why I put this in. There's no back-end royalty, which means you can't get paid when a game is bought. You can't get paid when it's performed by a symphony, because you give away that right on the technicality. This is kind of a BS thing, but it's industry. Because a game doesn't generate a public performance as defined by a performing rights organization. Ours is SOCAN in Canada, our performing rights organization. And this is from Variety magazine in 2009. But that's really important, is that like you get to take a little bit off the top because you're never making money on it again. That's the rationale for like, well, I'm going to charge more to compose because after that it's gone, as opposed to writing a pop song for, I mean, you still write them for $1 zillion, but every time it's on the radio, you get paid. Every time it's used in the commercial, you get paid. You guys remember Moby from like 1 million years ago? Do you remember that album he made where every song on the album was in a commercial? Yeah, like that's the rest. Like he doesn't have to work anymore. That's it. Isn't that amazing? Crazy. So here are some people who the Variety article mentions. Some of the big guns. Gary Scheinman, BioShock, Dante's Inferno, Destroy All Humans. Jack Wall did Mass Effect. He did some Call of Duty work. Splinter Cell and the later Myst games. Anand Zur did Dragon Age and the latter Dragon Ages, Fallout 3, and he's done a million other things. And then Jesper Kyd, who does Assassin's Creed and Borderlands. And then also a million others. But we're probably not going to hire them. Probably not going to hire them. It's okay. Because in our market, you can't do that. A reasonable rate in our market is about $400 to $800 a minute. We're not a AAA market. Maybe someday we will be, but if you charge $2,500 a minute, guess what? You're not getting work. We're not LA, and that's okay. That's fine. If you somehow pick up the next Borderlands, like charge to the teeth. Go for it. You guys got to pad that invoice. Or if you're doing the next Assassin's Creed or whatever, like go for it. In our market, though, like, our market is smaller. It's more mobile-based. It's more independent. That's where we are right now. But it's a great market. Winnipeg's a great place to be. I charge, just for fun fact, I charge $500 a minute for digital work and $750 for performance. And performance work is where I have to make parts, where I have to go in and record, where I have to hire musicians or like find musicians. Making parts is an enormous job. If any of you guys have ever done like performance work, it's a huge job. So that's it. Do you have any questions about the pay part of it? Hey.
Just going back to like the royalty thing. So it's totally unheard of. Like no one ever writes in their contracts like every copy sold I get 2 cents, whatever. Like, does anyone do that, or is there never? That's totally not.
No, there's usually a clause. It's called the work for hire clause, where you're essentially selling your work as a service. So you get paid for the service. You don't necessarily get paid for the product. Okay. So you're paid to write it, but you're not paid for what's written. Yeah, I know. I wish.
You're just selling it over, and it's like no longer your property.
That's right. Well, the thing that's the reverse loophole of that, which is the worst, is that you don't own it anymore. Yeah. So like if you put your own music, like let's say you write for like Civ 28, right? Civilization 1,000,000. You can't post that because you don't own it. That's the weird thing. So you have to kind of be okay with that. So like when I wrote for DuckTales, like it was the game was subcontracted to this local company called Complex Games. I couldn't post the DuckTales music because Disney owned it, which kind of sucks. You're like, look at all this awesome work I did for Disney. Oh no, can't show you. So yeah, that's just it's bad one way. It's worse the other way. So anyway, good question though. Hey.
How do you handle, I guess it's further than a finished content, how do you handle revisions and constant changes?
I'm so glad you said that. Allow me to answer your question in the next 10 slides. Is that okay? Oh, yeah. Okay. Drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts, at least 5 of them. Working together for the sound you both want. And working together is the important part because you are on a team now. You don't get to curse the viola because they played F sharp in measure 76. You are on a team, and that's just part of it. But it's one of the best parts of it. Working on a team is one of the best parts, especially if you have a good creative lead, which we're going to talk about. Awesome. Do you guys know Warhammer? Like the painting of various figurines under a big microscope by candlelight. This Space Marine is going to be so great. Yeah, so it is a huge universe. It is an enormous universe with books and books and books and books of history, and a very particular art and construction style. So the first thing I did when I kind of bid for it and I got it, the contract, I just did a whole bunch of research and I looked through art books and art books and art books. There's like a zillion art books about Warhammer. So it's very gritty. It's dark. It's still technologically advanced, but it's like the future is old. Kind of like the original Star Wars is, how like everything's falling apart, but it's the future, but it's not. But it's also kind of Roman. Like there's something kind of like imperial about it. Imperial, like the Roman Empire imperial. Capes and shining golden armor, and like the construction is almost like maybe like modern old Italian, the way we stereotype old Italian architecture. And that all kind of factors into the sound, the Colosseum-shaped thing in the back, but still very technological. I mean, not like steampunk technological, but like kind of, I was thinking MechWarrior. I grew up with MechWarrior as opposed to Warhammer. But there's so much detail in the universe. So this is where I started. And then once you start putting things together. And so in our case, the developers gave me a big leg up. If you're a developer in here, one of the things you can do is to make a document or a spreadsheet with all the necessary pieces and their durations already sketched out. So we have 7 minutes of music. We need a 2-minute combat. We need a 1.5-minute menu. We need a whatever. And so it's all laid out. So the composer looks at it and goes, oh, okay. You know, you don't have to worry about like writing a 4-minute battle music and then, oh, we actually only have the budget for 2 minutes and I have to rewrite the whole thing because it doesn't work. So they've already laid out all the architecture. If you're a developer, that is a great thing you can do. If you're a composer, ask for this. Because it might be they just haven't gotten to it yet. It's on the books, but it's not done yet. Also, establish which pieces are the most important to have first. So in our case, because most of the game is combat music was the first thing we did and practice to get the implementation going. And also, the opening cinematic was getting done at the same time. So they needed music so they could sync the animation. And then once they tweak the animation, then it gets sent back to me, and I have to rewrite the music. And then now that I've rewritten the music, we're going to change the animation. It's kind of chicken and the egg problem. Until you got this really great working thing. But that's making anything, right? Making anything creative is always revising. So once I have this, I start, writing. I start the capital C part of composing. And the creative lead said, musically, he wants it to be epic. These are the words he used. Grand, orchestral, dark, big drums and brass. And he said it absolutely has to be choral. That was one kind of sticking point. And he's right. Like when I look at the artwork, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, that's it. We were both on the same page, which was really great. Because sometimes as the composer you get to decide, and sometimes you kind of get told what it is. In this case, we were both totally on the same page. And I started writing. So we did combat first, and so as much as I would love to get it right the first time, that is almost never going to happen. So I'll send 3 short samples, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, roughly mixed, of various textures, various speeds, various feels. Double feel, like double time, nice big slow 2, anything, right? So here's combat 1. Very roughly mixed. And that's feeling like very like moving forward. Here's combat 2. A big 12/8 feel. And then combat 3 is a little more strategic, a little more like you're looking at it up here, like all the generals leaning over a map. So they're all different feels. They're all different speeds, different textures. I mean, they're all kind of stringy. But, I'll talk after the example. And the sloppiest French horn playing you've ever heard. Ugh, embarrassing. Now turns into a 90s action movie. So yeah, so, hey, hi.
Did they ever let you play the game during the process at all, or were you just kind of like talking back and forth?
At this point, just talking back and forth. There was, I was brought in pretty early, which we'll touch on in part 4. But yeah. So difference is what we're going for. Because if you all make them sound sort of the same, they might not like any of them, which happened in the game I did after this, where I wrote the first one. I'm like, oh, this is the best one. I'm just going to write 2 more, and they'll just whatever. They'll pick the first one. And they didn't like the first one or the second one, and the third one was okay because it all sounded like the first one. So yeah, difference is important. I don't remember what the next slide is, so we're going to see what happens. Oh yeah, talking about music. In a perfect world, your developer will be a musician, the one that lets you have free reign. The odds are that that's probably not going to happen, and that's totally okay. That's normal. But we can speak in ways that make it easy for non-musicians to pick up on and to contribute. So in our case, instrumentation is the first of 3 things we can talk about. Which instruments are playing, in case you're not a musician. So they could say, like, I'd like it to be more brassy. Like, that's something a composer can do. Like, oh, okay, awesome, I can work with that. Or more drums. Okay, I can do that. But if they say, this has only happened to me once, but like, it's not like red enough. Like, I can't do anything with that. I don't know what that means. So we're trying to find ways that we can mutually communicate. The second thing, and the thing that you're probably talking about, is texture. Texture is what those instruments are doing and how fast they're moving. That's a way we can describe texture to non-musicians. 9 out of 10 things that aren't what the developer is looking for is related to texture. They might say, like, it's too muddy, it's too bright, it's too draggy, it's too sad or stagnant or transparent, it's too ghostly or haunting, or it's too bouncy, it's too thick, it's too thin. So the emotional or feeling words are texture words, are things we use to deal with texture. And that's a translation thing. So when they say, like, oh, it's just too sad, like, okay, that's a texture thing. I can fix that. As opposed to, it's just not enough. Like, enough what? It's not enough what? And then the easiest thing, the thing that we often forget, is tempo. It's just the overall speed of the piece. It's too slow. It's too fast. Like, oh yeah, it is too slow. And like, changing the tempo can change everything. You know, if you take something that's kind of intense and ramp it up like 12 or 16 beats a minute, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's fast. That's it. It's amazing how different a piece can feel if you just change the tempo. You just change the tempo. That's it. But it's very rare that you know, yeah, the presto is too slow. Prestissimo, Kenley, prestissimo. Like, shut up. No. There was one time where I was composing for a game, and they said, you know, I really like it, but in measure 8, can you change that D chord to a D over F sharp chord? Like, no. No. I'll have it on your desk in the morning. I did change it, to my eternal shame. Like, that would be a suggestion that's like, that's too far. But it happens sometimes. We ended up going with Combat 1. Combat 1 was the thing we went with. So in that case, I now had to actually write Combat 1. Because I kind of wrote this thing, and it's like, okay, here's strings and drums and brass, and out the door. Combat 2, strings and snare drum, out the door. It's not complete. It's not full. You just need to give them a taste of what it's going to be. You kind of put the pillars in place. Like when you walk into a staged house, it's like, I know that's not your furniture, but your furniture is going to look a lot different. But you can kind of see what furniture looks like in here. That's what you kind of want to do in the samples. So here's the rough mix of Combat. Emphasis on rough. So it's a little fuller, a little bit bigger. Is that too loud? Okay. emphasis on choral. They really want that choral thing happening. I might be going to the thing that you're thinking, because other people were thinking it, and I wasn't thinking it, but it actually was a big thing. You want to ask first?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if that was all like digital.
Oh, that wasn't the thing. Yeah, that's my sound library. I like the Spitfire library.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, Spitfires are great.
You know, it suits the name, Betrayal, and even the title. I'm just a little confused about the image. No, that's just me.
Oh, this is a book title. Yeah.
The titles are nice with the music.
Thanks.
Just thinking there should be more metal.
It's funny you say that, actually, because I was thinking more mechanical sounds, but it actually got in the way of sound effects, because all the sound effects are metal. And it's like just was too much. And so I just, I'll just get rid of my metal. You can keep your metal. Did anyone think it sounded like Star Wars? Yeah. I didn't think that at first, but then the creative lead was like, it kind of sounds like Duel of the Fates. Like, shut up. Like, actually, no, but it's, and I wasn't thinking about it, but they're totally right. So when he said that, I'm like, no. Oh, wait. It's like, yep, yes it does. So, yeah, unconscious plagiarism happens all the time. Like every pop song on the radio right now. No, mine's 1, 4, 6, 5. I know. Sorry, that was upper nerd right there. Verse, chorus, double chorus, bridge. Yeah. So I had to revise that. Now that it's over. Oh, sorry, Tiffany, I interrupted you.
Oh, well, no, I was just thinking of, it seems like it's kind of a collaborative community.
Mm-hmm.
So how, when you are at odds in terms of your perceptions of what it should be, does it basically come down to I'll do whatever you want?
No.
Whatever the developers want? Because I'm thinking it's everybody's reputation's on the line, right? So if there's music that they really like that really has nothing to do with the game, everybody's thinking that the music isn't good, and then they might not hire you again, but really you're just doing what the developer asked you to do.
Oh, I see what you're asking. You mean like when should they defer to your judgment?
Yeah, who defers to whom?
You mutually defer. So in this case, like in the unlikely event there would be a copyright dispute, like I would never work again. So it's like, you know what? Fine. Even though I didn't think so in the beginning, I really think so now. Like now that I've heard it a bunch of times, like, oh, that's totally Duel of the Fates. Even though I haven't seen the movie in like a million years, because who watches the prequels regularly? But in that case, I would defer to them. If they liked a sample that I thought wasn't representative, I would say like, okay, but how about I finish this one sample and I'll send you a mixed one, and I'll do the one that you want, but let's just see which one you like better at the end, hoping that they will like what I want. But they might not. The idea is that you're always sending something good. Sometimes whether or not you like it is irrelevant. What's more important is whether or not you're sending something with integrity and quality. Like, both are good. I would pick this one, but if they like that one, like, they're both good, right?
But if they presented you with this game and said, we want it to be solo piano, that's the whole thing. Like, do you just say, maybe I'm not the person for this project, or do you just say, okay, I'll give you solo piano?
I think I would try and sweet talk my way up in that one. Okay, got solo piano, but check out what it sounds like with all these other instruments. No, I don't know. I've never had that experience, actually. I have gotten, like, it needs more marimba. There's too much marimba. It needs more of this. It needs less of this. It's too happy. It's too sad. You're trying to be too clever. I've gotten that one a few times. But that's okay. Like, that is a fair point. Like, all right, it's clever, but it's not good. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced that. Like, actually, what I'm writing is really funny. Like, oh, okay, listen to the modulation in measure 9. It goes to the key, the flat 6. Doesn't sound good. Oh, right. Right. So you're always setting something good, but sometimes it might not always be what you want. And that's okay. Like, as long as you're always setting quality, your name is still in the credits. And it's still good. And you still made the thing. Yeah. Is it okay if we move on? Excellent. Okay. So after we fix the Star Wars, I'm not going to play the revision of the Star Wars and after the final mix. I'll show you to the final mix, okay? So then it's good. They're like, hey, you fixed it, and now it's good. Away you go, final mix. And so this is like the worst case of playing a final mix with like weird, but whatever. You'll get it. Is whatever. I'm just going to play it. Worst trumpet high D you've ever heard. Oh, that's a paid by the note. So this part was fine. We had to leave this part. D like really piano? That's like the highest. It's the highest note that my trumpet will go. Is that like squee? Anyway, yeah, that's a punch in the face from trumpet players. So we got to take that one from beginning to end, and that one went pretty smoothly, except for the Star Wars part. Other than that, really smoothly. So instrumentation, texture, and tempo. So I think it's time we break off into our own groups again and start building our machine from the ground up. So using the game groups and the game concept as before, decide the appropriate number of tracks as well as their length. AAA, don't go too crazy because, 80 to 100 minutes of music, like grain of salt, that you'll need for your game. Considering the following things, though: instrumentation, texture, and speed. Tell us in a general way what your game will sound like. I know it's not always going to be one tune, but like, we're going to need a slow character theme. We're going to have a medium tempo menu music, fast level music, and victory defeat. Great. Like something like that. General. Bonus, pick one of your game's tracks and explain instrumentation, texture. That's supposed to say speed, but it says style. Specifically. The menu track is going to be recorder, bowron, mandolin, whatever. And the AAA, like, don't go too crazy. We only have about 5 minutes, so don't go too hard. Music will be going. When the music stops, then we're going to have a break for 10 minutes, okay? Sure. Something like that. And we're going to come back in with part 2. Do you have any questions about what we're up to? Brilliant. Disperse. I'm super interested in your results, but I also want to make sure that you get home on time. I don't want to keep you too late. So if you want to talk about it after with me, that's cool. But what I'm more interested in is the process. Is that you guys had a good process working with each other, some fun building your idea of the game. Because, you're not saying, like, it's going to start in F major and then it's going to modulate, But, like, you're thinking, okay, what does it feel like? What, like, a solo fiddle or orchestra or, like, drums or prog rock or, like, whatever. You're all, like, you're getting in that process. And that's a super fun part. The first 50% is so fun. So I hope that you're okay with bypassing the public performance of results, just so we can keep this train rolling and so we get into the nitty-gritty of it. Sound good? Thank you. Awesome. So we're going to move into, we're going to continue on with this a little bit and get into the meat and potatoes, the nitty-gritty of Horse Heresy, where things don't always go so smoothly. Before the break, we had 3 samples for combat, and we picked one of them. But the fun thing is sometimes your other samples can be for other other pieces. So Combat 2 became the enemy dialogue music. Here's Combat 2 again, in case you don't remember. preemptively turn this down. And so the creative lead said, like, if that were a little more imminent, a little more urgent, a little darker, a little scarier, a little more urgent and imminent were the words he used, that would be great for enemy dialogue. So that's what we did. So we just filled it out in the instrumentation. And the loop ends there. Anticlimactic. So you will write a lot of things that you won't use. Like, I don't know, that's normal for me. Where I have like pages and pages of stuff, and then I only end up using like 8 bars on a page of 70. But you might use some of it. That brings us to the times where you write something sort of good, but it's not quite ready, but it could be okay, but you're not quite sure, and it needs a little bit of finesse. So the ambient bass music was that example in this game. So the ambient bass music was this upon submission. Ambient meaning not super thematic, kind of in the background, more with feeling and stuff. I'm just going to leave this open for time. And then I cut off the ending just for the sake of the recording, because we'll hear it like two more times. And I thought that was pretty ambient. The creative lead responded with, I can see where you're going here. It might just be a bit too sad, though, at the beginning. It's tragic, certainly, as if you're scanning a battlefield after battle. Then there's this hope moment later on, which I cut off. From that point on, around 1 minute, it's working well. You don't need to change anything. So we're talking about texture, right? It's too sad. And he's right. It's, you don't want to be sitting in your bass, like, crying. It's okay, Space Marines. So yes, we're talking about texture and how it connects to emotion. So okay, all right. Well, it has to be sad because I think Warhammer is not a game with sunshine and gumdrops. So it has to be dark. So I'm going to make it more like militaristic and stuff. So we added some percussion, kept the groove going, and here's what it sounds like. But I largely kept a lot of it the same. I just built around it. So there's more of a sense of this and going somewhere. It's got some better direction. And this is the part I cut off before. This is the part we kept. And that's the loop. And it goes back to the beginning. So building around it. My response was, I kept most of the harmony and lines, but added more percussion and reinforced a stronger groove. It sounds more like trudging and marching than just being tragic and sad. Also more epic now. Not really, but I thought it was. Creative lead says, yeah, I definitely like the percussion, but it's still too sad. Especially with the other combat. I definitely don't want players to feel sad when they're playing their bass. Like, yeah, I understand that. So I just gutted. I gutted the middle. I kept all the percussion, all the things I added, and then I cut the middle stuff. And so we're still, if we're talking about our big three, instrumentation, texture, and speed, we're still tweaking texture, though the instrumentation is going to need to change. So the color is bigger and more epic rather than tragic and sad. We have to change the delivery method. Hey.
So what's the workbench you're using, the tools, and how do you go from concept to implementation, just maybe 2 stages? Do you work things out on piano at all, or directly on a computer, write it out, sketch it?
Always pencil and paper first.
Pencil and paper?
Always pencil and paper, yeah. Because you're going to see a lot of patterns that you don't know, and there are a lot of smarter ways to do it that your hands can't see.
There's notation.
Yeah. And then kind of build it across and like, you know, I'll write the melody and then on top like tambourine on beat 4, bass drum here, and so there's like the melody and there's all the percussion kind of around it.
So you start with an orchestral layout, like a score?
I start with one grand staff with treble and bass clef, and then it's all in kind of 4-part counterpoint or 1 or 2-part counterpoint, and then it builds out around. And then when I put it in the computer, then it's like, oh, this really needs a X, and then I just plug it in. So the sketch is not always what I keep at the end.
Do you use a notation software when you put it in, or just to a straight C?
I play it in. Yeah, just so that it can get the sensitivity of my hands, right? Especially as you get good libraries, your let's say your violins, right? As you press softer, your violins are not violins turned down. They are a slower bow stroke. And then as you press harder, it is a faster, deeper bow stroke. And it's not just turning the fader up or down. It is 2 really significantly different sounds. Same like brass playing, right? Like as you, let's say you have a trumpet, and when you push the key very softly, it is a very soft airstream going through the horn. But as you press hard, it is a hurricane going through that trumpet. So like, it's again, not just a fader, but it's definitely different sample sounds. Yeah. Oh man, this is the final one. I missed the setup. This is what we went with in the end. So the outside is the same, percussion is the same, harmony is similar, melody is totally new. And then we kept the end. And then we kept the end. So I'm just going to skip the end just for the sake of time, because you already heard it. In this case, the ambient music is pretty thematic now, so I might have to go back and change it, because it's not ambient, and that's what we wanted. Epic ambient is a tricky texture, but you can see what you think, blah, blah, blah. And then Creative Lead said, yeah, I like it. All right, I don't mind that it's so thematic. Let's go with it. And that's how it ended up. And then that was the final mix. I just kind of missed it, skipped a step in there for time. So we really were working the instrumentation and the texture to get the right feeling across. That's where we were going with that, the back and forth. Because we're working together. Again, like circle, underline, in italics, working together. We're on a team. And that takes us to actually getting it to deadline. Because now stuff is due. By the time you're sending away like final drafts, like, oh my God, it's tomorrow and it's 4 a.m. Yeah, this is really important. Also, like getting paid. Payment schedules are important too. So usually it says like the composer comes on near the end, but I'm telling you, it's never too early to bring on the composer. It is never too early to bring on the composer. Bold text. It is never too early. Because the earlier you can get in there, the more you can start. You got to start starting and stop stopping. You can send the composer concept art, screenshots, gameplay videos. It doesn't have to be finished. You just got to send them stuff. And the earlier the composer's on, the more dialogue you can have. It's usually via email. It also means the more revisions you can do. I don't charge for revisions because it's got to be right. You know, if I hire a contractor to build a deck And the first deck you build is like, well, I don't really know if I like that deck. You know, you kind of changed the plans a little bit. So yeah, but it's better. Yeah, well, maybe try again. Okay, I'm going to revise the deck. You know, this deck is still not right. It's like, well, we only paid for 2 deck revisions, so sorry. It's like, but you didn't build the thing I wanted you to build. And that's my justification for not.
Do people charge for revisions? Like, do people ever have it like, this is as many as you can get? And
Yeah, after 2 revisions, it's extra. Which I think is yeah. I don't love that approach, though, because they're paying you for something. If you're doing a service, they are paying you for it to be right. And that's my argument, is it has to be right, period. It's not, you know. Sorry?
I guess it sort of depends on the client, right? Because, like, I don't know, my experience, you can kind of smell when it's going to be bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
But, like, in my situation, I've never had anybody take advantage of that on my end.
I agree, yeah. Because, yeah, like, it's got to be right. And Van Gogh said that art's never finished, it's merely abandoned, but it's abandoned when the game is due. It's like, well, it's due, so this is it. And hopefully it's done. So when you're getting paid, you can also establish a payment schedule. The way we usually do it is something at the beginning and something at the end. The beginning is nice if you have to buy gear. I had to buy a bunch of gear for Warhammer, so I had money to do it, which was nice. And at the end, there was money. Some companies want to use middle payments. Like, you know, we'll pay you something at the beginning, we'll see where you're at halfway, and then we'll pay you at the end. Sometimes I feel like we'll pay you halfway and we'll see where it goes, just in case maybe things don't work out or you have creative disputes or personality disputes. You can do a middle payment, whatever. You could have firm payments, like it's a 4-month contract, and we're going to pay at the end of every month, 25% of the contract, which is cool too. But at the end, whatever everyone agrees upon is fine. Whatever works for you is fine. That's it. Do you have any questions about that part of it? Hey.
I have a question. So, do you hire people to play music, or do you do that all yourself?
I sequence everything. I don't have the recording space or equipment to record really well. So, like, I don't have access to, like, a symphony-grade trombone player with the best mics in a great studio. Like, that would cost me way more than buying the trombone library. Does that make sense? Yeah. And also, like, then I can get the perfect take if I want it, right? I can just do it over and over and over again instead of waiting for them to give me a perfect take. But whatever works for you. If you've got a bunch of friends that, like, play all your instruments, cool. Yeah. If you can establish deadlines about early, like, when things are due, like all the early drafts, cool. By March 1st, great. That tells me everything I need to know. Or we need the animation trailer, or we need the animation music first. And then the rest can come after that. That's important, too, is like establishing what comes first. What comes first?
Can you get a little bit more into the synchronization aspect?
It's not super interesting. Just because it's very general. Like, at this part, we're going to do something like this. At this part, we're going to do something like this. But I'm never syncing up, like, trumpet shots to an explosion. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could. I just... Yeah. It's more like when this scene starts, it's going to be sad. When this scene starts. Yeah, it's very general. And then when things get cut, then you change. Yeah. Yeah. We can talk more about that later, though, if you want. I just want to clip along, just to make sure we get to all the things, because I want to make sure that I get you out of here in 15 minutes. Because now we get to the fun part. Track of the year and others. This is for all the composers. The future, the past, and knowing your stuff. This is the London Philharmonic, playing the score to Angry Birds. Wow. I know. From Lord of the Rings to Angry Birds. We were playing Beethoven last night. Yeah. So there was a lot of really great music in 2014. 2014 was a great year for video game music. That being said, there's one track that stands out as like the pinnacle of design, and that's from Shovel Knight. Do you guys know Shovel Knight? Oh my God, this track is a masterpiece. Shovel Knight is like a love letter to platformers. It's a great game. What I love about this is that Vert J. Kaufman scored it with an NES, like an actual NES. Except he didn't code everything like they did in the past. He used it more like a pedal. And he used modern mixing techniques and modern like MIDI data. There's a word I'm looking for, and I can't think of what it is. Like modern MIDI like automation and execution to make the NES do things it couldn't do in 1985. And like that's really cool to me. So I'm going to let you play. I'm going to play it once through the loop. Maybe I won't. I'll play it once through like the first A section. So like that bass drum is deeper than the NES can do. And all the bass slides. Yeah. All the tape delay between the top two channels. Oh, I just love this. No, I just want to make sure that I get to all the things we need to talk about.
I gotta get that library. I'm spending way too much time doing that on it.
Yep.
Do you use an actual NES or just like trackers?
No, he used an actual NES. Yeah. Because then he ran, at least I think he did. That's what I read about it. Because once I read that, I'm like, oh my god. Like, anyway, like when Anna is running their guitars through Nintendo's, like, that's amazing to me. Anyway, so I'll let play in the background. Because the thing is, like, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up with the NES. I also have that bias to 8 and 16-bit chiptune music because I grew up with it. However, there is a push, and especially in the West, and by the West I mean the U.S., to give the sense that video game music is maturing, is growing up out of the 8-bit tradition where it was young and foolish. And while that could kind of be BS, there was that time about an hour ago where I talked about that New Yorker article. That's coming back.
Well, that's like AC/DC versus Symphony X.
I don't know anything about that.
Rock and roll is growing up too.
Well, I'd like to challenge that with this, and here's the argument. I'm going to talk about this later. Not long ago, such work felt like a throwaway for composers who couldn't get work elsewhere, said Steve Schnur, worldwide executive for music and marketing at Electronic Arts. Oh, boo! Describing the beeps and words as early good humor truck or ice cream truck music. Created hastily and late in the development process. Now musical scores, whether rock, rap, or classical, are becoming an integral part of the finished product, because they weren't before, of course. Often lavishly produced and seamlessly embedded into the storylines and gaming action. At its best, Mr. Schnur said, music is the reason for the emotional response that games never had 10 or 20 years ago. Do you remember when I played Ocarina of Time in the beginning? You went, oh. Boom, ring. Yeah. I know, like, no, but that's it, right? Is that this is the discussion that's being put forward by the West, and I, as a video game music composer, challenge this so heartily, and we're all going to have opinions on this. It's okay. I'd love to talk about this after, but if you just let me power through this. The problem, of course, is that a lot of this is factually inaccurate, because as we know, music in the 80s was a huge pain. This is, I don't know if you guys have seen Digging in the Carts. You guys know Digging in the Carts? It's about the evolution of 8-bit chiptune music in the 80s and 90s in Japan. And the thing that I really want to tackle is just this part here. There's something, sorry. Today's chiptune musicians do amazing things with old hardware, but context is everything. There's something eternally romantic about how video game composers were forced to work back then, plotting out hand-drawn waveforms, not out of choice, but because no other way existed. Oh, hastily done at the end of the process? Absolutely not. Not even close. This is Junko Ozawa, who talks about creating her instruments, her waveforms, on graph paper. That's how you make NES music. Isn't that crazy? There is no hastily produced anything. She's pioneering a new way of making music. We are on the cutting edge of like synthesized music for console gaming.
You can do this now.
Yeah, you could still do it. That's right.
I have audio API.
And
graph notes, beautiful.
yeah, and it just kind of, I don't like this argument. Well, the argument from the other article, because as we know in technology has never grown up. It is always in the process of growing up. You never get like, oh, the iWatch, we've made it.
We're done technology.
We are done technology, guys. We made, it doesn't work that way. And to say that like we've made it to the symphony, it's matured, it's done. The problem is that the symphony was invented 240 years ago. Game music has now gone from advancement to 1770. And I just want you to think about that for a second. I love the orchestra. I grew up in the orchestra. I have a music degree in classical music, not an orchestral instrument, but someday the euphonium will get it the time. But the problem is that it's not a great argument. And I think that it's dangerous for us to think about music as like, we have to write a sweeping score, like a film score, because games are getting more cinematic, right? That's the trend. The problem is that it doesn't work the other way. I can't watch Lord of the Rings and hang out in the Shire for the whole movie, like I can in a video game. Oh, look at this awesome area, and you can stay there for 10 hours. Whereas like film drags you along, games give you that time. And I think that it's dangerous for us to only go the orchestral or the modern or the super ultra produced route. And here's why I think that. I think that it's very popular, but we should not, as composers, confuse popularity with integrity. Those are two different things. And I'd like to illustrate that with a scimitar of core repertoire. Do you guys ever heard of core repertoire? It's a classical music term. Core repertoire is, this is a way a band would describe it. Major works for band, concert band, by the most important and influential composers for band. Inclusion is based on the universal acceptance of the composer and the frequency the specific pieces are recorded or mentioned in repertoire lists and surveys. So if I were to talk about video game music, I would say the major works from video games by the most important and influential composers for video games. Inclusion is based on the universal acceptance of the composer, and this is the key. The frequency, the specific pieces are recorded, remixed, or referenced in culture. In culture, not to be confused with, oh, I like that game, because that's not the same. Or, I played that when I was growing up. That, however, is part of it. So we have to be careful not to confuse popularity and integrity, because sometimes we do that, like this. In 2011, the London Philharmonic released the greatest game music ever. Angry Birds. Grand Theft Auto 4. Battlefield 2 is pretty sweet. Okay, I'll give you that one. Halo 3. Halo 1, maybe. Halo 3, probably not. Dead Space, maybe. Do you notice how Western that is? Isn't that interesting? How of all the music that we associate as like the music of video games, I would assume most of us associate it with Japan. Not all of it, in fairness, not all of it. I love Halo. But when I look at Angry Birds, like Angry Birds is not the greatest music of all time. We have to be careful not to confuse that. However, there's money involved, isn't there? Exactly, because Angry Birds is popular. Thankfully, the London Philharmonic released a second one, which has a little bit more integrity. I don't love Revelations. I do love that theme, though. That's a great piece of music. Skyrim, definitely. Dragon Roost, that is certainly core repertoire. Absolutely. One Winged Angel, Mass Effect 3, okay, fine. Halo, I might not put Never Forget, but fair. Sonic, Chrono, Luigi's Mansion, maybe. Kingdom Hearts, maybe. Super Metroid is like the Beethoven 5, ba-ba-ba-ba of video game music. Diablo, probably not. Batman. Fez and Portal will become core repertoire later on. Little Big Planet, cool game, maybe, I don't know. Do you see the danger, though, of confusing integrity and popularity? Oh, this is going to be tight. I don't remember what the next slide is, so I hope it's good. Oh, yeah. So what is core repertoire anyway? Where do I start? Do you know what I mean when I say core repertoire? Like the pieces of music that are core to what we do as in video game music, in the medium of writing. I just want to make sure that's super clear because the whole next part is about core repertoire. Where do I start? Okay, do you remember we talked about culture, how like it's determined by like the culture that is involved in video game music? Culture is the big part. Because if I were to start, I would start where the culture is. This is the top 20 most remixed games on OC Remix. When I go down that list, I think, yep, that is core repertoire. I might put Donkey Kong Country over Donkey Kong Country 2, but I'm told that no, absolutely not. Yeah, so like that's core. Like this is culture deciding what the important. Series is great. But like I mean, there are a lot of people like nodding, like, yeah, like would you mostly agree? You don't have to be like, I wouldn't put Wild Arms on there. I don't know if I put Wild Arms in there. But like, I'm just saying, like, that's what culture has decided. That, when I look at that, I'm like, yes, indeed. So I thought, because we're starting with music and ending with music, we're going to have a core repertoire quiz to wrap it up. And then we'll do a little bit of last-minute questions, and then with 2 minutes left, I'm going to let you go. Sound okay? Core repertoire. We're going to, again, go from most obvious to least obvious, hopefully. Here is number 1. I know. I'm starting with most obvious, okay? Just let it play out. Just let it play out. All right. I saw a lot of hands. I saw many hands. My kingdom for a hand.
I think it's from the Beach Landing soundtrack Wonderful.
Right game, wrong track. It's not called Main Theme, but you're right. It's called Truth and Reconciliation, but excellent guess. It is the main theme of the game, though. Yeah, it absolutely is. Number 2. Come on, I got it. Oh, right, yeah. Yeah. But the fact that you know it tells me its place in core repertoire, right? Is that as a culture, you know what that is. I know, but actually, I bet it's not just because. I bet you would know it regardless of the meme.
It's more the other way around. It became a meme because of
Yeah, because it's prevalent in culture. Do we need to talk about what it is? Yes, from any takers on what console it was ripped from?
Super Nintendo.
It was not the Super Nintendo version. It was the arcade version. Suckers. Okay. Number 3. Oh, it was Mega Man. Yeah, sorry, I pushed down instead of across. But I got to play it because it's important in car repertoire. Would we have gotten it anyway?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
Do you know why they never play Mega Man at Video Games Live?
I have no idea.
Because it makes me really mad, did they?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, and I missed it.
Oh, sorry. It was Mega Man. Sorry, guys. I pushed the wrong button. Anticlimactic. Number 4. I got you a bunch of times. Is there anyone else? Okay, Kurt. It is not Chrono Trigger. Yes. Do you know the name of the track? It is the title theme. It has a specific name. Any takers? No? Angel's Fear. Angel's Fear. Yeah, from Secret of Mana. But you know it, though, right? Okay. Last one. Anyone other than Kurt? Yeah? It is Kid Icarus. Do you know what the tune is?
I don't know. The main theme, I don't know.
It's the overworld theme. It's the overworld theme in Kid Icarus. Yeah.
It's not in at all, but my closest guess is Singing in the Last Guitar of John Rusher.
No, sorry. It's the overworld theme in Kid Icarus. Yeah. But you know this because of culture, right? You were raised in this culture. Here's... Oh, we're 1 minute over. This is the last slide, or the second last slide. Things to lead with. Take the medium seriously. Write for the medium. Don't write film music, because guess what? It's not a film. Even when I'm writing like big orchestral stuff, I'm thinking about the ostinato. I'm thinking about the repeating figures underneath. I'm thinking about the structure. I still structure it and write it like a game, because it's a game. That's it. That's the best part. Work together. Work together with your producer. Work with your creative lead. Work as a team. Work with your counterparts. When you're talking about music, especially to a non-musician, think about it as instrumentation, what the instruments are, texture, what they're doing, and how fast they're moving, and tempo, how fast or slow the pieces. The last thing, learn the core repertoire. In this world, you don't have to, but isn't that sad? You should learn the core repertoire if you don't know it already. Most of you already do, though. Yeah, because even though you're not writing 8-bit music, you got to know that. That's like I don't know, classical music composer like not knowing bum 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 bum. You're not writing that, but you got to know that. That's like core repertoire.
Or a guitar guy not knowing Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love.
Exactly. Stairway to Heaven. What's that? Okay. I don't know if we have time for questions, but we could talk about it after. Is that cool with you guys? We just hang. I'll be around for a while. Oh, goodness gracious, yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry to keep you slightly longer.
I have a question.
Yep.
Do you have any experience using mod or programs like it?
No, I'm too scared.
Were you ever involved in the actual programming part of it?
Well, not so much in this, but after the break, it's going to jump in.